everybody, and welcome to Africa News Network, coming to you from Midrand here in Johannesburg. As always, we love hearing from you. You can engage us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook at NN7TV, or live stream nn7.com/live. But first, let's take a look at the latest news headlines. Public Protector explains redeployment of her predecessor's staff. She says it's common for a new incumbent to appoint her own staff. Kunene adds that even Madonsela brought her own team of staff when she took office. The Hawks consider options after McBride refused to present himself for a warning statement. They say instead of approaching public platforms, the IPID executive director should cooperate with the investigation. Black waiter of the upmarket Cape Town eatery who served the controversial Two Blacks bill receives death threats. Management swears innocence after racial profiling outrage at the restaurant. Congolese protesters are on the warpath in Pretoria against President Kabila. Police used rubber bullets to disperse the crowd gathered outside the Congolese embassy. 7 protesters were arrested and several injured. A massive rise in fatal crashes at the beginning of the festive season, an increase of 17% compared to the previous year, with 845 fatalities recorded since the 1st to the 19th of December. And our top story at 5, the waiter embroiled in the row over a bill is now getting death threats. The bill served at the Bungalow, an upmarket restaurant in Clifton in Cape Town, had sparked a furore on social media. The bill indicated customers as 2 blacks, and ironically, he happens to be a man of the same color. Management of the restaurants insists they have a clear policy of non-discrimination on basis of gender or race. Additional training has now been put in place to reinforce the procedures and systems at the restaurant. And the restaurant issued a statement saying, and I quote, "On this occasion, this was the act of one employee and an internal investigation is taking place. Procedures are being put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And no offense was intended, and we are sorry that Mr. Maqatuka had this experience," end quote. The restaurant was lambasted on social media, but some people have also come out and say that this is a case of much ado over nothing. And it's over to Stefanie Janse van Vieren for more.
There's been mixed reactions on social media. Some people saying that this is once again racism revealing its ugly head in South Africa, and other people saying that it's not really a big deal. Well, if we look at some of the comments coming in on Twitter, we have Leah Wright saying, "Did they not give you the wrong bill, dude? Maybe report them to human rights." So we can see some other tweets coming in as well from Martin Semeki saying, "Very sad that a shop will do that and take the money of people it class them somehow." Taking a look at the other social media reaction coming in from Lebza Motau, who says, "Since when do restaurants write race on receipts? Yane." And then the last reaction coming through is the other side of the reaction, thinking that it's not so big a deal. No offense, but if this is your biggest stress in life, you're wasting your life. So as you can see, a lot of mixed reactions coming through, and we'll hope to see the story develop further.
Hello, an upmarket Cape Town restaurant is under severe criticism for an alleged racist policy. The owner, Chris Cortulis, also owns the Santa nightclub Taboo. They issued an apology saying it was the action of one employee and not management's stance. And joining us on the line as ANN7 reporter Chelsea Lotz. We also have Kenny Kunene on the line. We'll start with you, Kenny. Thanks so much for joining us. We saw your tweet saying that obviously racism is not new in Cape Town, and that it's something that we basically have to live with.
Yes, I experienced it when we still had ZAR in Cape Town. How the DA-led government officials, racism is so visible you can cut it with a blade. There was at some point when I was driving my Lamborghini with 2 white girls, and I was stopped. They were drinking, I was not drinking. I just took them for a spin. And white officers chased me to a robot. They arrested me for overload. These girls spilled them with alcohol, told them that they are not underage, and there's nothing wrong that I have done. I'm just taking them for a spin. They actually threw bottles of glasses of alcohol on them, and they did not even arrest them.
All right,
I
but
had
can
to go
it,
to
yeah.
the police station. So I know I've experienced that racism and name calling of black people in the Western Cape. It's all well known for those who stay in the Western Cape.
All right, now racism in itself hasn't been criminalized as such. There's legislation against hate speech, of which the penalty would be a fine or what have you. How do you think then we integrate society, particularly different cultures, in public spaces so that these kind of experiences can be eradicated?
The only way to root out racism, because the only racism that I see, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, on social networks, and that I experience wherever I am, is white racism against blacks. I don't see black people being racist against white people. And this season is very rife. We saw last year with Penny Sparrow at this particular time insulting black people, calling them names. So the only way to deal with racism seriously is to make sure that it is an illegal thing, and whoever says any racist or does any racist act then must be prosecuted criminally. We have to criminalize it. That is the only way that those who are racist will be able to deal with it. Otherwise, they must all spend time in prison, just like criminals.
All right, we have a caller on the line. Sorry, Kenny, we have Jerry on the line. Thanks for calling. And you at home, 011-542-2186. You can join in as well. Hello, Terry. Oh, Jerry.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes.
What's your comment or question?
Ma'am, jokes aside, this is a pure racism.
How so, Jerry? Because the waiter, it turns out, is also black.
The reason is when you take this, what you call the order at the back and let the lady prepare the food for the customer at the front, the plates or either the services won't be the same, but the money will be the same. Will be charged the same money with the white person, whereby the food that is going to be served on the table, it won't be the same because it's mentioned black.
All right, so you come from the restaurant or hospitality industry, Jerry. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so this would be a policy in the restaurant to serve inferior food or quality to black people as opposed to white patrons.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah, I suggest you report it, though. Put it on social media so we can also ventilate it. Thanks so much for your call, Jerry. But Kenny, just going back to how we move forward with the aspirations of a social cohesive environment or community, and these sporadic cases of racism derailing that imperative or national imperative, beyond complaining and going on social media, there needs to be an adjustment of attitudes and paradigms on those that are inflicting these kind of acts. Kenny?
Yes, I wanted to say, Cindy, that is true, but I just want to get back to this issue of the restaurant, because now they are telling everybody that it was a black waiter who wrote that. Number one, I called the restaurant because there's a number on the slip, because I thought maybe this thing, look, I hate racism with everything, with all its head and tail. So I decided to waste my time and call the number on the slip so that I make sure this is not Photoshopped. And I don't know who the owners of that restaurant are. So I asked for the manager. And I was then referred to, and when they answered the phone, they said, "Welcome to Bangalore Restaurant." They put me through to a manager called Michelle. I said to Michelle, there's a slip that is making rounds on social networks where patrons were addressed as two blacks when they were given their bill. What is happening? Is this your policy? Is this what is reflected on your slips? And she arrogantly said to me, "I am not even going to respond or comment about that. We do our things our own way here." That's what she said to me.
All right.
You
So,
see?
yeah, I
and
think,
then I called again, and then I was taken to reservation. It was a black woman answering me, and I said to her, "Tell that Michelle," because she dropped the phone after telling me that. I said, "Tell that Michelle that she just spoke to a caller, and the caller is saying, if this is her attitude If she is a racist, she has no place in South Africa. She must get out of this country. I used an F word because I hate people who take black people's money. These white people who take black people's money, yet they treat them like trash.
All
And
right,
then now they
Kenny?
are blaming a black waiter.
All right, we'll investigate. We've got our reporter Chelsea Lords there at the restaurant as well, who'll join us in a bit just to find out if this is indeed policy of the restaurant. But we have William Bird on the line, Director of Media Monitoring Africa. William, thanks so much for your time. Do you think this is much ado about nothing, or is there a case to investigate?
The facts of beyond what I've seen on social media, but clearly I don't think that any kind of level of racism should be seen as making much ado about nothing. I think we must acknowledge its severity in our own country, and we must make sure that we take strong positions on it to eradicate it. I think when it comes to the social media elements, I think what we need to start looking at is how we can start to share something that's a little bit more constructive on social media rather than just challenging people as to whether they are getting upset righteous about it or whether they shouldn't be. You know, I think that you shouldn't be telling people how they should feel, but what we should be doing is looking at the sort of various forms and functions that it takes, and we need to make sure that we act against those who perpetuate it.
Yeah, not to trivialize the matter, what I meant is that for the restaurant to even have the software or the function where you can profile your patrons based on race or what it is that they're wearing, but primarily, obviously, the race aspect being the one that's most contentious, that if this is an honest mistake of just enabling their waiters to identify patrons, or whether it is a policy that has now had unintended consequences by the reaction we see on social media.
So look, I think that we all know that it's not the first time in the world that someone has had a challenge around how you identify different tables. And you'll find that most restaurants around the world use something called a table number. It's not exactly the most challenging system to work out. So I don't buy that for a second. You know, I think that there's clear that there was racial profiling going on. And I think the thing is that, you know, these incidents, we've heard some other incidents just recently on social media, and what social media does is it gives these people the power to make it seem as though their voices have a lot more value than they actually do in society. And what's important is that people do respond and condemn those acts, and that we again try and look at how we move beyond that, which isn't to say that we ignore it. Instead, it's exactly the opposite. It's to say, how do we confront these small incidents of racism on a daily basis? Because to be clear, saying two blacks on a restaurant slip is a very different crime to, for example, trying to push someone into a coffin. I think we can all acknowledge that those are very different levels of racism, but it's precisely those small incidents that occur on a daily basis that we need to start to name and identify and make sure that people see them for what they are. You know, so there's a lot of education that needs to go on around this, where people need to understand that this is racism and why it's racism, and as I said, we need to call it out and make sure that we try and eradicate it.
All right, William, just stay on the line. We take a caller, Abraham in Spruit View. Thanks so much for calling. And what's your comment or question?
No, my comment is this, ma'am. This is Africa. Oh, I'm wrong. I just want to say to you, this is Africa. But if the white people, they do like this, they call us what nicknames, we are baboons or what. But why they are living with us in Africa? Why they not go back to Europe where is no black people?
Mm. Yeah, point taken. Yeah, that's the difficulty of coexistence. Yeah,
they must leave us alone because we are in Africa.
Correct. But I mean, Africa is for all that lives in it, isn't it? So we have to find better means of coexisting. But a point taken, thanks for your call. Zanele Nlwana is Deputy National Convener of the Black First and Land First movement. Zanele, thanks so much for your time. You've obviously reacted to this particular incident. What do we do beyond just ventilating it on television or social media to correct this kind of unwelcome behavior?
Greetings to you, my sister, and greetings to the listeners and viewers of Kunene 7. We have said as a movement before that South Africa is first and foremost a racist country. So really acts like this, where racism is overtly expressed in a white restaurant, in a white suburb, shouldn't really surprise us, especially as black people, because the uneven property relations in South Africa create a conducive environment for this type of attitude towards black people and marginalization of black people to continue to persist, right? White people are able to have racial profiling, to treat black people in this country in whatever way they can, because they have social power, they have political power, they have economic power to be able to do so. So all these personal acts or individual acts of racism that instigate a response from black people, outrage from black people, which is justified, will continue to persist for as long as we don't deal with the root of racism in South Africa, or perhaps in Africa, or towards black people as a people in totality. So, for example, if we do not address the land ownership of South Africa, where 80% of the land is owned at least by 35 white families, this includes white businesses, and where majority of black people in South Africa still continue to live in inhabitable environments such as townships, and we are homeless, we are landless in our own land. If we are unable to deal with excuse me, if we are unable to deal with this, to say historically black people were land dispossessed by white settlers who chose to enslave black and African people, we will continue to have these acts, and we will continue to be surprised as if South Africa is not a racist country.
All right, Zanele, let's just please hold the line. Chelsea Lotz, ANN7 reporter, is in Cape Town at the bungalow. Chelsea, thanks so much for joining us. What has management, beyond issuing a statement of apology, done to mediate in this particular issue? Are they even running as business as usual?
Good afternoon, Cindy, and good afternoon to our viewers at home. Yes, they are running business as usual, and the restaurant has been hustling and bustling today as normal. The marketing manager of the bungalow, Micheline, says that they did offer the two customers a complimentary dinner, complimentary drinks. She said that not only did the waiter profusely apologize, but the management did, as well as the head management. The waiter himself was African and said that he felt absolutely distraught about what had happened.
Chelsea, we were just speaking to William Burr, Director of Media Monitoring Africa, saying internationally a global standard of identifying patrons in eateries is the table number, that you don't need the added feature of describing their appearance or, you know, the race classification, as it were in this case. So how does the management explain that they have this particular added on software that enables waiters to type in extra additional information besides what the bill amounts to?
The management has stated that it is not the way that they run business, that it is definitely not their system of typing in words or names. They do have a table numbering system that they said most of the waiters use. They stand quite strong on the fact that they say it was the waiter's personal preference to profile the various customers, to racially profile them, but that it was his personal choice. Now, some people are saying that they don't buy that, they don't believe that story. However, the waiter himself did say that it was his personal choice, that it is something he regrets, and that he does know that the restaurant policy is to use table numbers, and that is the way that they work and operate.
All right, Chelsea, thanks so much for that update. Chelsea Lotz, ANN7 reporter outside the bungalow in Clifton in Cape Town, the subject of our discussion this afternoon, talking about the profiling of patrons using race as an option. And we're joined by Raul in KwaZulu-Natal. Thanks for holding, Raul. What's your question or comment?
Just two short ones. One, how does Kunene know? Can you hear me?
We're listening.
How does Kunene know that it was not a black waiter when it clearly is investigated by your reporting act as a black waiter? And two, where was he talking so loud when ANC Jimmy Manyane picked on colored and Indians? Why was his silence so deafening? Where was he when his ANC Jimmy Manyane picked on colored and Indians? Why was he silent?
All right, Jabu, I hope we have Kenny on the line. Kenny, if you recall that story with Zonele Manyi at the time, saying that there's a huge concentration of colored people in the Western Cape. I don't necessarily want to go there, but just in looking at the oversensitivity perhaps that we experience as South Africans, that when these kind of issues surface, it just opens up that wound that has not fully been reconciled based on our history, William, that this is just, I suppose, endemic with what the maturity of our democracy is all about, that we need not necessarily be overly sensitive. Yes, deal with the matters as with a condemnation that they deserve, but also to take in light that there's positives in this country as well. But I'll start with Kenny. Kenny, just your response to Raul.
Yes, very simple response. It is expected that you will be told that is a black waiter. But I hope your journalist there gets an opportunity to speak to that waiter, because I'm telling you, you might get a different story. He has just been told you will have to take the fall for this one. There is no waiter that will go against a simple system of table numbering. Number two, I have decided that I will be a social activist on issues that I pick up, and one of those issues is racism. That is why I dealt with the issue of Penny Sparrow. I will comment, I will object to any racist acts that shows their hate. The issue of Jimmy Manyi is just him trying to divert me. I'm not going to entertain diversion. We are talking about racism by white establishments and white individuals against black people of this country. And I'm saying, I don't want to talk politics of land. I'm saying, for government to show its seriousness in dealing with racism, because all these cases are white racists against ordinary black people. So I'm saying, also to the gentleman who was there, he said these are small incidents that happen every now and then. There's nothing small about racism. There's nothing small about a racist act. There's nothing small about a racist statement. Anything racist is big. So he mustn't say these are small things that happen every now and then. He is trivializing racism. And this is what I dislike about these commentators who come here and patronize us as black people. So I'm saying, if government wants to show its seriousness, racism must be criminalized.
All right,
racism
Kenny,
must be criminalized.
Let's leave it there. Thanks so much. William Bird, just final word from you, and especially when it comes to the reaction on social media. Of course, we can't prescribe how people express themselves, but to also treat the cases based on the merits and not use a blanket approach that this is the true identity or the nature of South Africans.
Well, look, clearly the racism is alive and well. Does it mean that every person and every white person is a racist? I don't think that that's necessarily the case. But is it fair to say that it's endemic and that it often tends to occur in these more subtle ways? I think that that's more likely the case. I think part of what we need to do is be having these kinds of discussions, but not necessarily among black people, but white people themselves need to be having these discussions about what racism means and how and what steps we're going to take to eradicate it, because ultimately it's not a black person's problem. It's a white person's issue that we need to deal with and work on and seek to eradicate and take ownership of.
Yeah, because the trend, it seems that the racist slurs, are almost suggesting that black people need to validate their presence in this country, on the continent. They need to somehow always be explaining themselves and trying to coexist with other races.
Yeah, look, as I said, it's something that's, I think it's a bit like when we challenge gender-based violence and expect women to solve that problem, when by and large it's men that are the ones responsible for it. And it's the same thing here. We go around saying, what are black people going to do? I don't think that that's the right approach. I think we need to be saying we need to understand the hurt and the anger and the frustration around racism that black people experience and endure. And then as white people, it needs to be saying, well, what are we going to do about this, and how do we take ownership of it and find ways of making meaningful change in this regard. You know, white people need to be the ones that are condemning those kinds of acts.
All right, William, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm afraid we're out of time. Our last caller is Sammy in Brongospray. Thanks for holding. What's your question or comment? Hi, Ariyo. Sammy, hi.
I'm fine. Yeah. You see, the government I can see that is making this thing to escalate like this. If the government does not criminalize racism, this thing is going to be continue every time and then. The government, for this year, I think it's the third time or the fourth time this thing is coming, and the government are just silent about it. The government must find a real solution to this thing, because this thing is coming out of hand in South Africa here. In West Africa, there's nothing like this in West Africa. Maybe because the people are not like, I will not say lenient to the way people are, and the blacks are here are so lenient to the white people. It's not good.
All right. Thanks so much, Sammy, saying that we are too lenient with the unpalatable behavior of racists in the country and that it needs to be legalized. But thanks so much to our panelists and for the callers as well for taking the trouble to call in. We'll take a quick ad break and we'll see you shortly.